From his $48 million Miami mansion to hell on earth where chaos reigns. Just some of the words used to describe the Metropolitan Detention Center where Sean Diddy Combs
appeal to hold him in jail without bail.
Well, in many ways, given the severity of the charges and what was argued yesterday as well, it was all but predictable that this could be the likely outcome here.
Yeah, and you're former NYPD, so I want to talk to you about this facility where he's being held right now. This jail has been described as horrific, disgusting. I mean, how long could Diddy be in there if he is convicted?
Meanwhile, Diddy woke up this morning inside the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. The federal jail has been called, quote, hell on earth.
Some of the shocking things that you see are the manufacturing of weapons, assaults. Inmates hid cell phones within their rectal cavity. Jails and prisons are very different from free society.
Sean Diddy Combs, a man who has lived his life at the pinnacle of his own world, once believed he was invincible. However, the higher you rise, the harder you fall. Now facing the grim reality of federal prison, Diddy, once known for his lavish lifestyle and entertainment empire, finds himself in a vastly different world. Charged with serious allegations including sex trafficking and racketeering, the music mogul is confronted with a legal battle that could potentially upend his entire career.
We're now getting a closer look at the mountains of evidence federal investigators collected at the homes of P. Diddy leading up to his indictment. This includes things like guns, ammunition, electronic evidence, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and personal lubricant. To understand all this and how it relates to Diddy's case, we're hearing from former CIA officer and FBI agent Tracy Walder. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. Major news this week out of New York, where now disgraced rapper Sean P. Diddy Combs was arrested and taken into custody. On Monday, a grand jury indicted him on multiple federal charges, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Homeland Security took Diddy into custody at the Park Hyatt in New York. According to his legal team, Diddy's been in the city for the past week ahead of these anticipated charges. So Diddy may have had a heads up that these charges were on the way, but it wasn't a complete surprise to the rest of us either. Federal investigators issued search warrants on 2 of Diddy's homes this spring, and that's when experts told us it's not if, but when Diddy will be arrested.
Diddy has pleaded not guilty, and his legal team is working diligently to improve his current situation. However, he remains at the notorious Metropolitan Detention Center MDC in Brooklyn, a facility infamous for its violent environment and dreadful living conditions.
He is not the first high-profile inmate to pass through these walls. Ghislaine Maxwell, R. Kelly, Pharma Bro, Martin Shkreli, and crypto fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried, all as they waited for their federal criminal trials, called this jail home. But the conditions of the prison are far from homey, notoriously described as, quote, dreadful, as one judge put it. Some on the bench have even moved away from sending nonviolent defendants there. In April, a group of detainees that prosecutors said were MS-13 gang members in court documents stabbed an inmate 44 times in an attack caught on camera. 2 shivs were recovered from the attack. You see them here. The victim survived. And in the last 3 years alone, 4 inmates have died by suicide. And violence is not the only issue. Accusations of medical neglect, staffing shortages, smuggling of drugs, some allegedly facilitated by employees. At least 6 staff members charged with crimes in the last 5 years, according to the AP. Some accused of accepting bribes and providing contraband.
Conditions at the Metropolitan Detention Center MDC have been described as inhumane, characterized by overcrowding, frequent power outages, and a lack of basic necessities. Inmates often endure long periods without heating, electricity, or access to hot water. In 2019, a severe power outage left the facility without heat during the frigid winter months, forcing inmates to survive in freezing temperatures. Additionally, the prison has been plagued by frequent incidents of violence, with gang-related attacks being common. One particularly shocking incident involved a stabbing by members of the MS-13 gang, captured on video. Fortunately, the victim survived, but it highlighted the level of brutality that occurs within MDC's walls.
I've had clients describe MDC as hell, as the worst conditions they've been in.
Lance A. Clark is a federal defense attorney who's been there many times.
Now, if the government is going to mandate that they are responsible for your well-being, they have to ensure the safety of your well-being.
Occupy the streets until they get heat.
In the winter of 2019, protests over a power outage left inmates without light or heat for a week in the cold.
I understand how cold it must be in those cells, and not to have any electricity, any lights, and to not be able to communicate with your family is just inhumane.
The prison has about 1,200 detainees and is the only federal prison in the nation's largest city. The DOJ shut down New York City's other federal jail, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, back in 2021, 2 years after Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide there. A Bureau of Prisons spokesman telling NBC News they, quote, take seriously addressing the staffing and other challenges at MDC Brooklyn, adding the director appointed an urgent action team and they've increased staffing.
According to Lance Clark, a federal defense attorney who has handled cases involving MDC inmates, the conditions there are among the worst he has ever seen. He has publicly criticized the government's failure to ensure the basic safety and well-being of inmates. Diddy's legal team is now leveraging these concerns in their argument to have him moved or released on bail. Anjanette Levy also weighed in on the situation, discussing the potential length of Diddy's jail time.
It doesn't surprise me that it's 3 charges. What will not surprise me is his continuing to fight. And there is very little willingness of people who are high profile to actually accept responsibility. He has a presumption of innocence. He has every right to go to trial, though with the evidence and what we're seeing, if convicted, he's looking at like the R. Kelly scenario, decades in prison. And I hope at some point, if the evidence is so overwhelming, he can say, if I've done something wrong and created victims, how can I make amends beyond just scratching checks? This is also devastating for my family. Is there some path to accept responsibility and plead guilty? Because if he's able to do that, he sets himself up for a scenario where he might not spend the rest of his life in prison, can actually have some freedom and begin to get on the right side of the law and identify with people that he's hurt. The issue is Sam Bankman-Fried, Elizabeth Holmes, so many people, R. Kelly, despite overwhelming evidence, they continue to go down this path of going to trial, claim that they are the victim, and if and when they lose, a sentence that could be 10 or 15 years. I'm not saying 10 or 15 years isn't a long time, but it's not 40 years or 30 years.
So far, the court has denied Diddy's requests, keeping him in MDC for the time being. His legal team is appealing this decision, seeking either a transfer to a facility in New Jersey or his release on a $50 million bail package. They argue that the alternative facility offers better conditions and that Diddy should be allowed to await trial in a more humane setting.
And then the other thing was racketeering charges. We've seen what's going on with the sex trafficking of that. He's in jail. He's literally in jail right now. He's denied bail. You know, Diddy's famous lines, take that, take that. I don't know what's going on in jail right now, but hopefully it's not
he's probably loving that, right, Deli?
We'll see what happens there. But the racketeering thing, I mean, you've interviewed Sammy the Bull and Michael Francis, and the list goes on and on and all. The whole RICO charges. You know, the whole concept of racketeering is that you're in an illegitimate business, basically disguising as a real business, but it's actually fraudulent, bribery, extortion, fraud, money laundering, drug trafficking, embezzlement. What's the RICO? What's the racketeering in your opinion of what could potentially be going on with Diddy, just based on everyone you've interviewed?
Well, there's so many categories to it, right? I mean, you get to pick and choose. They get to pick and choose. Sure. The way they wrote this law allows them to go after people for different reasons. Okay, you pick and choose which one this is. He's in most of them.
Yeah,
he's in most of them. If you think about it, right, with the stories that's coming up. By the way,
despite their efforts, the judge handling the case has remained unconvinced, citing the severity of the charges against Diddy as the primary reason for keeping him detained. However, the legal team continues to fight, hoping to secure some form of relief for their client before his trial begins in 2025.
What prosecutors are arguing is not only does your client pose a flight risk, because obviously he's incredibly wealthy, has access to planes and a lot of staff, even though you said he turned over his passport to you months ago, they were also worried about him being able to interfere with witnesses and calling them. And so I guess the question is, how do you assure the court that that won't happen if prosecutors are saying, this is someone who's attempted to bribe security staff and has already threatened and interfered with witnesses?
So I think the most important thing, even more important than the passport, is that Mr. Combs came to New York on September 5th. As soon as we realized that this indictment was going to be coming down in a matter of weeks, maybe months, but sometime soon, Mr. Combs got on a plane, left his home in Florida, flew to New York. I called the prosecutors myself. I said, Mr. Combs is in New York. Do you want to know where he is? If you want to know where he is, I'll tell you where he is, but he wants to surrender. He's here to surrender. They didn't want him to surrender because if he surrenders, they don't get to the judge that he's a flight risk and he's a danger. Because who, as a danger and a flight risk, would fly to New York and surrender? So they didn't want him to surrender.
The charges facing Diddy are among the most serious of his career. He is accused of organizing elaborate events known as freak-off parties over the course of a decade, where women were allegedly drugged and coerced into sexual acts. According to the 14-page indictment, these events often involved heavy drug use, including cocaine, ketamine, and GHB, a substance commonly referred to as the date rape drug.
Discuss this is Ms. Rashad's attorney, Lisa Bloom. Lisa, thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, we know that P. Diddy has been arrested in this ongoing investigation carried out by Homeland Security officials, but you filed a lawsuit on behalf of your client, Dawn Rashad, in a separate case. What is Ms. Rashad accusing P. Diddy of?
Yes, we find it striking that the criminal case that was filed yesterday is so strikingly similar to the civil case that we filed a week ago. In that case that we filed, we alleged sex trafficking, sexual abuse, false imprisonment, forced labor, many of the same allegations that the U.S. government chose to file yesterday. And, when we filed our case, some people said, wow, this is really shocking. It's extreme. It's hard to believe. And now we have the weight of the U.S. government really behind it, making very similar allegations.
One of the more bizarre details emerging from the investigation is the discovery of over 1,000 bottles of baby oil at Diddy's Miami mansion. Authorities believe these were used during the parties, adding another disturbing layer to the allegations. Diddy is also accused of transporting women across state lines for prostitution, which strengthens the racketeering charges he is facing. If convicted, he could spend decades behind bars.
Holmes claimed that the mogul had rooms that were clearly just dedicated, rooms, plural, for sex. And he said, so if you were in these sex parties, you were being recorded from every possible angle, including angles that you wouldn't even know about because they were hidden. And he said days long, they called them freak-offs, where he drugged up victims and they were allegedly forced to sleep with male prostitutes. I sent you this video. I'm pretty sure you guys have all seen these videos that are just surfacing from Diddy. This is Diddy of him at a party and what he does to his guests at his parties.
Okay,
check this one out. Look what he does. Look at him, Adam. Is this during the sun? The sun is out.
Ladies and gentlemen, for all those in London that don't know what happens to the white man when he comes to a P. Diddy party, this is what happens to the white man.
Look. That guy is just...
It's so unfortunate. You gotta pull back, though, so they can see.
Like, you're proud of that?
That's crazy. Matt, move out the way. You're still alive. Look at that. Look. What you... There's a drink on his head. And that's James from Simeon Mobile Disco. He's
putting people on blast.
DJs aren't supposed to pass out, but when they come to one of my parties, this is what happens to them. I put him to sleep.
Much of the case against Diddy seems to be built on claims made by his former girlfriend, singer Cassie. In 2023, she filed a lawsuit against Diddy, accusing him of physical abuse and manipulation. Her bravery in coming forward may have opened the door for prosecutors to launch a broader investigation into Diddy's activities, and many view her as a key figure in bringing these disturbing allegations to light.
During his bail appeal, NBC reporters inside the courtroom report that Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson read out loud the text that Diddy reportedly sent to Cassie Ventura after an altercation in a hotel in 2016. She references security video of the event that went public, showing Diddy hitting his then-girlfriend in a hotel hallway. The text from Diddy at the time read, quote, "Call me, the cops are here. I got 6 kids. Yo, please call, I'm surrounded."
Cassie's lawsuit laid the groundwork for prosecutors to pursue charges under the RICO statute, a federal law typically used to dismantle criminal organizations. The use of this statute suggests that authorities believe Diddy's alleged crimes were part of a larger organized effort. This legal approach, which was also used in the Weinstein case, could lead to further charges being filed against other individuals involved.
Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity.
The racketeering charge is very important, and I'm so glad to see it in the federal indictment today, because what that is this is not just about Sean Combs. It's about Sean plus all of the enablers who conspired with him, the government says, to cover up his physical and sexual abuse of women for so many years. I have no idea what they are planning to do, but I would say this to everyone who is associated with Diddy. Now is the time to come forward, to acknowledge your part in this if you had a part in this, to apologize, and to do what you can to help the victims. The time for attacking the victims, for insulting the women, that's over. Justice is coming for Sean Combs and for everybody who was complicit with him in his enterprise.
The entertainment industry is on edge as the investigation continues, with insiders speculating that other celebrities or figures close to Diddy could be implicated in the scandal. The U.S. Attorney's Office has made it clear that their investigation is ongoing, and more revelations may come to light in the coming months. For now, however, Diddy remains the primary focus of the case.
Good morning, Brian and Natalie. I got to tell you, my thoughts reading the 14-page indictment yesterday were that there are a lot of people in Hollywood who are probably worried about which Diddy parties they were at and what was going on. That's not to say that they were necessarily even involved in any of the things that are alleged by the U.S. Attorney's Office. But if you're at that party and it turns out that that's when he set up one of these freak-off sex parties, or that it was going on in another room and you didn't know about it, there's a good chance that you're going to be called by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And certainly if you were involved, you would get a call, because they're going to want to know everything you want to know and may even want you to be a witness. I just think, we're just starting to scratch the surface of what this case, this case is going to touch and involve. And the feds have said that this remains an open investigation. There could be more charges for Diddy. There could be more charges for other people involved.
Yeah, and you're former NYPD, so I want to talk to you about this facility where he's being held right now. This jail has been described as horrific, disgusting. I mean, how long could Diddy be in there if he is convicted? I mean, he's not going to be there in prison if he's convicted. It's a detention center where he's being held. But when you think about him being in there compared to what he's used to, look, he's allegedly committed all of these crimes, so many people say this is where he should be, but it's hard to believe that he's going to stay there. Do you think he's going to stay there?
No, he won't. What will happen is that he's there his trial hasn't even started. The lawyers are talking about possibly having a trial with him later on, and that won't be until next year. MDC, I've heard the conditions are very difficult, they're deplorable. As you said, the maggots, the mice. I had some friends that work there, so they tell me that the conditions are kind of horrible. MCC closed, so all the prisoners now are going into MDC, the federal prisoners. But what happens is that after a while, when they get sentenced, they get moved. They get moved to prisons around the country. Now, from what I'm hearing today, it could be true or not true, I heard that he might have been moved to Newark.